We didn't do a classic late kick extra today. We did the college football playoff scenario roundtable. So normally on Thursday morning, if you're a subscriber to the Late Kick podcast, you get something in that feed that you don't get on the YouTube channel, and that is strictly Q&A. We call it the Late Kick Extra podcast. And I just take your questions, I answer them. It's a very revolutionary concept, I know. But this morning we did something different. Therefore, I didn't get to all the questions we got from this week. And so I wanted to hit one of them right now. Jeremy asked something that a lot of you have asked. I've seen some national guys writing about this week. He just asked simply, has the college football playoff hurt the sport of college football overall? So I wanted to take a poll. You're listening or you're watching right now, live or replay. I just want you to think to yourself, you're probably all alone. If you're not, explain what you're about to do to your loved ones who are watching you, or else they're going to think weird things. But I just want to take a poll. I want you to raise your hand out there if you think the playoff has hurt the sport of college football overall. And I know what the reasons are, so you tell me if I nail down one or more of your reasons here. The reasons that I normally hear, I wrote them down. So all the focus goes to the college football playoff. A lot of the coverage goes to the college football playoff. Only the teams who are in the playoff hunt get coverage late in the season. And then like 90% of the sport doesn't have the spotlight shown on it. Also, games outside the college football playoff sphere, so if it doesn't have playoff implications, in other words, they just don't matter. Bowls, a lot of bowls are deemed kind of irrelevant. Is that most of it? There's one more, and I'm going to address it separately. But basically, a lot of you just feel the college football playoff has sucked all the attention out of the room, and it's put it on about 10 teams at the expense of about 120 teams. Do you feel that way? Because if you feel that way, I feel that way along with you. But I got to ask you something. Has the college football playoff hurt the sport? Or is the way the playoff is covered hurting the sport? Because those are two different things. The playoff could be totally innocent here, and the folks charged with covering this sport could be doing you a disservice. If you're a fan of North Carolina football right now, you guys got a big game Saturday against Miami. I know, because we're about to talk about it in the show. Don't see many other people talking about it. We do things a little bit differently on our show because of the very problems that I have listened to you state about the playoff. We're not too good to listen to our audience here. And so when you guys say that stuff, I listen. And if you want evidence of that, think back, the regular listeners and viewers to the show. Think back over the last few months, so the college football season. How many playoff segments have you seen me do or listened to me do? How many playoff projections have we done? How many brackets has Colin made up graphically and put on the screen? And here's where we think the Rose Bowl is right now, and here's where we think things will be in Miami second week of January. The next time we do that will be the first time we've done it. We haven't done hardly any playoff conversation. In fact, this is one of the very few college football playoff segments that we've done the entire season. And the reason is not because of the fact that it wouldn't do traffic. Those segments would get us a lot of views. They would do really good traffic. I don't think it's what's best for the sport, and I would like to contribute in some small way to the overall health of the sport. Here's the thing about the playoff. We're going to have so much time to talk about that. We're going to have a ton of time. Even in a truncated year, we got a ton of time to talk about that. I have been of the opinion, as are apparently a lot of you, that there is too much attention paid on this thing at the expense of the overall greater good of the sport. But see, I don't view that as a playoff problem. I just think the folks who cover the sport need to take it upon themselves and understand there's a little responsibility to contribute to the health of the sport. I mean, at the very core of your role, I mean, you are a conduit between the product and the viewer, the product and the fan, the game and the fan. You got to do your job better. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is because we don't do all the playoff stuff. And when we do it, it gets a lot of views. So, I mean, we could up our traffic in doing that, and we still don't do it. But there's another argument, okay? For those of you who raised your hand, and then I read all the reasons, and you said, no, you didn't read my reason. Your reason is probably this. Your reason is probably, well, it just allows the same few teams to dominate the sport over and over and over again. Same teams make the playoff. Evidence, Josh. Check this out. Ohio State won it in 2014, and then Bama won it in 2015, and then it was Clemson, and then it was Bama, and then it was Clemson. And it's just the same teams over and over and over again. So that in and of itself is a fact. The same few teams have dominated in the playoff era. So I would ask you, because I totally disagree. I think those are non sequiturs. Causation and correlation, two different things there. I would ask you, how would you fix that? Because if you come at me with playoff expansion, well, I'll beat that down like a piñata, and you guys know me well enough to know that by now. But how would you fix that? I mean, would playoff expansion really fix that? Like expanding to 8 teams all of a sudden negates Alabama's stranglehold on being able to lock down one of these spots every year? Truth be told, the exclusivity of the college football playoff field only being at 4 is probably the only thing that's kept Bama out of it every single year and keeps Ohio State out of it every single year. And once they get in, I think you understand what they do once they do get in. You understand, in general, what the more talented rosters do once they get in there and have a few weeks to get ready, right? You know that doesn't look any different, right? Okay, if we're on the same page there. But I want to also offer to you, the playoff's not the reason those teams are dominating. The playoff just so happens to be congruent to something else that's happened. A couple of things, actually, as far as I can tell, that have occurred, and it just happens to be that the timelines have synced up. Let me give you 2 other things, 2 other little elephants that are in the room, oxymoron there. Number one, as you probably noticed, there's been a pretty sizable influx of cash in this sport over the last 20 some odd years. Money is a great, great contributor to the gulf that is growing by the day and the difference between the haves and the have-nots. Now, I want you to ask yourself, is it just because these teams reside in wealthy portions of the United States? No. Not a whole lot of Fortune 5 companies in Clemson, South Carolina, or Tuscaloosa, Alabama, but they care. They just care more. Here's what the money did. The influx in cash gave virtual launching pads and the ability to purchase launching pads to put the programs that are run correctly on. And then they rocketed into orbit. Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson's done it. Georgia's kind of sitting on the launching pad. It's a really cool looking launching pad. Hadn't found the fuse yet, but don't worry, in due time. Oklahoma, kind of the same way. But you know the song and dance. You know which programs we're talking about here. They were already run the right way. These were already solid programs, and they were in the right place, and the right time found them. It wasn't just a completely stupid happenstance stroke of luck. That's not how that works. They were ready, and then the cash allowed them to separate. Conversely, you got all the money in the world at Texas, and you can't take a leak without getting the front of your pants wet. So the difference there is not the money. The difference is some places know how to run their stuff, and other places don't. The money allows you to just rocket into orbit, and here's the second part. Look at how offense has changed in college football. Quarterback's always been the most important position in the sport, at least in your and my lifetimes it has been. But understand what the quarterback position is today. With the evolution of offenses, the way Nick Saban was winning just a decade ago would get him run out of the building against his own teams today. So what's changed? Well, what's changed is having a good quarterback used to mean you had a pretty good chance. But with the way the quarterback position has been weaponized today, it's like having access to nuclear missiles versus someone who doesn't. You got all the keys. If you got Trevor Lawrence, or you got Justin Fields, or you got Kyle Trask, or Tua Tagovailoa, or Mac Jones, and you got the weapons around them, and all those players want to go play at the places that have the best quarterbacks. Now you see how the separation happens. But my question to you, you can't disagree with any of that. That's just reality. Those are facts. They stare you in the face every Saturday. My question is, what about the playoff contributed to any of that? That just so happens the playoff has come along in the last few years, but it hasn't contributed to that. If you scrap the playoff tomorrow, that stuff would still be going on. The money's not going anywhere. The offensive evolution's not going anywhere. In fact, it's still going in the same direction, and both respectively are trending up, up, up. Playoff's not doing any of that. Contracting the playoff, expanding the playoff, it's not going to change who dominates this sport. But if you believe that, I'll leave you with this. If you believe that there's been this unimpenetrable wall that's been built between the haves and the have-nots, and there's this exclusive club and most of us aren't allowed in it, how do you explain LSU last year? They weren't one of those. They weren't a perennial elite. They weren't there in 2014 or 15, 16, 17, 18. But then all of a sudden, not only did they make the playoff in 2019, they won the national championship in 2019. And some call them the best team of all time. How'd they do it? Well, they invested, and then they hit a home run at quarterback. That's all you got to do. That's all. It's that easy. Just get a generational quarterback and get full buy-in. These things sound so simple. Of course, they're not. But those are the differences. That's why you have the few and then the many standing outside looking through the fence at the few. It's not the playoff. The playoff is this scapegoat or a scapegoat. It's that straw man that's built over in the corner because it's much easier, trust me, for an administrator or a coach to say, oh, it's because of the playoff. than it is for them to look in the mirror and say, boy, we've really screwed things up here, haven't we?